Hello, Wendy. Welcome.
Hi, Sai. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I'm so glad you have the time to join us today. Um, we are looking forward to the 13th with the event coming up on rethinking women's leadership with the Women Business Collaborative and Andy Simon. And it's a great honor and privilege to be with you today, Wendy, and help, if you will, in any way to amplify your voice in whichever way possible. So thank you,
I,
thank you, thank you.
I appreciate you inviting me and happy to be part of the conversation.
Wonderful. I would love for you to introduce yourself and kind of share who you are and let the world hear that wonderful voice of yours.
Sure. My name is Wendy Pirkins. I am the Director of Operations for a company called Call Potential. The business is basically software is our service. So we provide communication and customer relationship platform, as well as operational oversight, right now specifically for the self-storage industry. In my role specifically, I basically am in charge of the customer success. So I lead two different teams. I have an onboarding and account management team that's about 5 people, and the support team, which is the front line for the users to help them use the product. And right now that's a team of 6 people. And I'd like to touch a little bit, if it's okay, just on my path and how I got here, because I think it's going to be relevant to the conversation we're going to have.
Most definitely.
Okay.
We're all ears, my friend. Please.
A little non-traditional, maybe. I have a degree in corporate communications. So when I got out of school, I was fortunate enough, I had a great role model. My mother was a very successful businesswoman and worked in sales and marketing for about 10 and a half years to start with. So various roles, worked my way up, worked for companies such as Discover and Ameritech, and continued to progress and had different leadership roles. Towards the end of that 10 and a half years, I was managing a team of about 10 sales and marketing folks and decided to take a step back from business to focus on family. We had some extreme personal circumstances that led us to that decision. And so I stepped away, started a family when my kids were babies or younger toddlers, if you will. Did a lot of volunteer work, advocacy for child abuse prevention, things of that nature, parent mentoring. So always did things that, looking back, crossed over into the business world and kept me more relevant than I guess I realized at the time. And when my youngest son was in preschool, I decided it was time to go back into the actual working world. And so I went in as a preschool teacher because it was something I was qualified to do, felt excited about doing it, and it also offered me the flexibility I needed. So taught preschool for about 6 years, which was very fulfilling, but still longed to get back into business and do some of the things that I had trained on for so long and was successful in for a long period of time. So it was actually a lunch with a friend and a very successful businesswoman that kind of catapulted me to say, hey, you are relevant. Start looking. There might be more out there than you think there is. So started looking. Surprisingly, had 2 opportunities. Luckily, I think I chose the right one, fell upon Call Potential. And it was a very entry-level position. And it was part-time, but the company was very small. It was I think about 6 people in the office when I started, but a great growing company, a great owner that gave me the opportunity to shine and prove what my value was. And as the company grew, he presented me with amazing opportunity to lead the customer success team. And as we grew, like I said, we started with about 5 people in the office, and now my team alone is about 11 people. So non-traditional, but may resonate with a lot of moms out there, or people that maybe stepped away for other family reasons, or elderly care. There's a lot of reasons people step away from traditional business, but still continue to learn and grow in ways that don't necessarily seem like they align, but they most definitely do.
Very well said. Very well said. And thank you for sharing that, because definitively, I mean, one of the things that struck me as I learned more about your history and your journey and what have you is the preschool experience and the lessons that we can take from respectfully interacting with I don't want to reference them as just mere children. Respectfully, we take those lessons and bring them into the workplace. So can you help us get a little bit more insights there?
Absolutely. I used to joke when I first stepped into business that, gosh, some of the things that transferred over, like, use kind words, keep your hands to yourself, the super basic lessons. But the scary part is we step away from it. We all went through that learning, And we were supposed to take all that to business, but then we get so caught up in business and policies and procedures that as professionals, we lose the basics. So there are so many things that I can correlate. Sharing, one of the most obvious, right? We all learn to share as a kid, but in the business world, especially as a leader, to learn to share the responsibility, share the accolades, make sure you share the rewards of letting other people stand in the limelight and shine as well. So that's probably one of the most basic. I know one that I try to go back to that I am not always good at, but I'm trying to be conscious of it, is when I taught preschool, there was a science class, and I would always start the class out with, I wonder what would happen if, and it was kind of an I wonder. And, they'd throw out ideas, and I usually expected the ideas they were going to throw out, but they'd always throw me a curveball. Something, what if you turn it completely upside down, or what if you, and I would always try it. No matter how crazy it sounded, I would always try it because you're opening that up. Well, that correlates to business so much. The craziest idea might not be so crazy. I have to stop myself sometimes when I get caught up in the day-to-day business and someone on my team comes to me with a question, just answering it, telling them what to do or solving their problem for them. And I know that the deep down, the teacher in me says, stop and ask them, what do you think? Because we don't always do that, but we do that with children all the time, right? The why, every other question out of their mouth is why. So why don't we continue to do that in business? And I have to remind myself of that and to say a couple of reasons. Well, what do you think? Because rather than giving them the answer, help lead them to the answer or teach them the answer, or the opposite of, where I thought it was going to go, what do you think? And they're going to throw out an idea that I hadn't even considered before. So I think, specific to that, the wondering and the leading into answers rather than just giving them to them, let them explore and find answers themselves. I think that's huge and something that we forget and that I know I have to be conscious and remind myself of.
That's so powerful all around, Wendy, because it's as if I apply these words, children have magic already. And I say already, they have that magic, and that wonder and that awe manifests exactly as you open up and invite them into it. And then we, somewhere along the way, and I'm going to use my word, if you will, we're habitualized in some way to think, I need to be something else. And then we, for lack of any other words, we get it out of our system. It gets taken out of our system through experiences, and we get into the workplace. And before you know it, we're stale, stagnant, not alive the way that children are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My good friend, how do we reverse some of that?
I think it's that constantly reminding ourselves, let's all go back to preschool for a day or two, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Fun? And that's another real key thing is keep it fun. In preschool, everything that we're learning and doing is fun, and you're always trying to come up with new ideas. So we got to remember to keep it fun and fresh in business. And as you say, your words of habitual. We go into work every day, time to clock in, time to make the donuts kind of mentality. So I think, especially as leaders in business, we need to make sure that we're bringing that freshness. We're giving the permission to be creative and encouraging a trial and error, mentality. Our owner is wonderful in doing that. He constantly is reminding us it's okay to make mistakes. So I need to make sure that I do that. He does that company wide, but with my team, I need to say that as well and remind them, hey, if we don't try it, let's see. Or if they come up with an idea I hadn't thought of, let's try it. Let's see what comes of it. We have to evaluate what's the worst that could happen. And risk, obviously, we can't be as free as we are in preschool. But I think we need to encourage that creativity and say, it's okay, let's figure it out together.
And to your point, Wendy, it really does take an aware leader in terms of where we're risk tolerant versus where we're risk averse and where we're risk taking and all those facets around risk and uncertainty. But definitively, awareness is such a key facet of that leadership and how it manifests.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm aware of because I know that my tendencies are I want everything to be perfect. I'm a very organized, very detailed, but I have to consciously remind myself all the time. It's I go into the preschool with a plan, right? You have an agenda, what you're going to get through today, but you got to be flexible. If you've got to group of kids that just had way too much sugar that day, you've got to be able to work on the fly. So I have to be conscious of that with my team, with teammates, in a meeting with other leadership people on the team to make sure that I'm flexible enough. I can have my agenda in mind, but I have to be able to listen to people and remind myself that, there's other views. So it's a constant challenge, but I didn't realize how much I had been doing it outside of business.
Yeah. Yeah. And doing it so naturally, I'll say outside of business, that you actually forgot you were doing it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. I when I wanted to get back into business, I thought, I'm irrelevant. What do I have to offer? But then when you have to put it on paper and do that resume and prepare for that interview and talk about all the correlations, whether it was in, the volunteer and advocacy that I did, or like I said, just teaching children or leading children, I'm teaching them things, but they're teaching me as much as I'm teaching them. And that is so, there are just so many small things that correlate directly into the business world. Things that I think sometimes people forget, the human kindness side of it. I joked at the beginning, use kind words, right?
Mm-hmm.
You would never call a child in preschool out that did something wrong and embarrass them in front of a group. But yet in business, people do that all the time. They don't think about what that's going to look like or how that's going to hinder somebody's growth or imagination. So it's really important that we continue to think about those.
Very, very, very powerfully said. I wanna challenge us, if you will, since we have you, as short as the time that we do have you. I want to challenge us to look at the world through your eyes, and here's what I mean by that. You've had the wisdom, and I think you know me well enough and how crazy I am at this juncture, if you will. You've had the wisdom to look at children and from their, I'll say, masculine and feminine energy and the way they interact as children,
Mm-hmm.
and that natural setting in which they interact. And then you've had, of course, the opportunity to see it in the workplace in general, in terms of how feminine energy and masculine energy manifests.
Sure.
Any insights you can give us from sort of what we experience as children, and from your observation, and in the adult spectrum as well?
Interesting. It's hard for me to focus on that because I never wanted to be a woman in the business world. I wanted to be a professional in the business world.
Yep.
And as I mentioned, in my eyes, I've been fortunate that, I watched my mother start as a secretary and work her way up to a VP. So that was natural to me. I didn't look at her as a woman doing that. I looked at her as that's just expected. And my experience has been similar. Most of the companies I've worked for, I haven't had to call out, well, it's because I'm a woman or a man
Mm-hmm.
versus a woman. There's been a few incidents where I've had a man say things that are pretty condescending in a way that was focused towards a woman. But if I'm looking at that now, I can say that wasn't just against women. That was an individual that, almost a preschool bully, if you will, that would find something. They happened to pick me being a woman and use that as my weakness, because in their eyes it was, but they would have done the same thing to a man, just found something else that they wanted to pick on. I know that I'm naive to say that it doesn't exist. I have a daughter who's going into a very male-dominated field. And so I know that she shared experiences. She's engineering and in high school was on some teams with predominantly men and would come home frustrated that she wasn't listened to. But I've been able to look at that and maybe help guide her that she was being trained to be a leader and didn't even know it. So when they dismissed her ideas, rather than bucking the system, she's not quiet, she stands up for herself, but she was kind of defeated, but then sat back, listened, said, let me contribute however I can. And then when the opportunity came up and the team was not doing well or failing, she looked at that as, here's the opportunity, now let me present my idea. And you do see that in some areas. I don't want to be naive, but I don't like to call too much attention to it I don't want to say play the victim, but I don't want to be, well, I'm a woman, so people treat me different. There's it's a fine line of trying to stereotype. I do get I have to be cognizant of myself. I was pretty curt or direct in a meeting recently. And I said, look, I don't mean to be use the B word. And I thought, why would I say that? That a man would be assertive or, taking control. So why do we look at it that way? But, there are times where I'm very detailed. I hold things together. I like all the pieces in place. Well, if you put a female spin on that, you're a control freak, right? So get rid of those. It's not female, male. It's what we're good at. And inherently, if there's a meeting where a woman is asked to take the notes, it's not because she was a woman. It's because she's detailed and she's good at it. So I try to take the gender out of it and look at it as, what are we good at? Maybe you can't stereotype across the board, but inherently, as you say, there's some male-dominated traits and some female-dominated traits, but we have to make sure that we're looking at them as skills and not trying to put people in buckets.
Very eloquently said. And I think I might have shared with you, I can't recall. When I've worked with executives, I try to find the opportunity where they can go observe children. And what I have, if I apply just a few more words to kind of what my observations, if you will,
sure.
Children don't focus on differences. They focus on uniqueness to come together to create a greater whole. They don't think in differences. Uniqueness, gosh, what? And you said it so perfectly. What are people contributing to a greater whole? It's that unique factor. Wendy's going to do something much better than I can do. And I'm okay with that. And Wendy's okay with that. And there's going to be something I can do, perhaps that Wendy doesn't do so much as well. And we're going to tap into that uniqueness to get a greater whole.
Absolutely.
So if we can carry that message, right? Leverage the uniqueness for the greater whole versus look for differences and then try to integrate the differences. Very, very different. And I'm very intentional with those words, if you will, as
absolutely. And I love that, because we don't have to say it's because you're a man, you're a woman. It's your skill set for whatever reason. And maybe you find it more in men or you find it more in women. You never want to say, well, women are detailed, but that means men can't be detailed, right? So I think if we focus on skills, and that's where I said in the beginning, I don't want to be a woman in business. I want to be a professional. Yep. And whatever I bring to the table for whatever reason, that's what we need to celebrate. And also recognize my weaknesses. I'm part of a Vistage group, and ironically, the things that I'm saying carry over from preschool and personal life into business. The exact same happens the opposite way. There are so many things in this professional group that I take a step back and say, wow, I really could use this to parent my teenage children, right? Yeah. And one of them recently was, being a fearless leader and admitting what you're not good at. Mm-hmm. Mom's supposed to know everything, right? Well, I'm seeing, after hearing some of these things in these presentations that I've gone to, maybe I have to step back to let my kids thrive. So whether you're a leader in business, whether you're a leader at home, show your kryptonite was the exact terminology of, you know what, I'm not really good at that. That's something you're good at. How about I let you take over that? So I think it works both ways, from business to personal. Yep. It's life. It's just being a human being in life.
Yes. It's accepting and bringing together every aspect, all of our edges.
Good and bad, but if we're self-aware, right? That term you used, definitely self-aware.
So I want to explore a few more things, if that's okay.
Sure.
Definitively, when I first met you, and when we first met, if you will, I was immediately, and I'll say it this way, I was immediately taken by your ability to step into a situation, in that you didn't fight it. It was almost natural. It was exceedingly natural. That's the way I experienced it. And and I say, especially, I'll say as we met each other, because you offered a very powerful perspective, without getting into the details, but you offered a very powerful perspective, and you immediately stepped into it. There wasn't hesitation. There wasn't unnecessary reserve. It was respectful by all means. So if I can ask it this way, then, given what I experienced and the power that I see within you, respectfully, if you dig down deep, what drives that? What makes it so potent, and what drives it?
Just wanting to succeed, wanting things to work. Definitely, there's that wanting to be liked, right? You want people to respect you. You want people to think highly of you. So there's always that in there. But in the end, feeling good that I was able to accomplish something, that I can corral people together, if you will, pull and find the best in people. And kind of in a preschool room, you've got the wild kids and you've got the ones that are quiet, and you've got to pull things out of them and get them to work together. So for me, I like to take charge. I like to be a leader. I like to have things organized and make sure that we're going about it in a structured way, which, again, self-aware, sometimes I need to let go, let the chaos happen a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But I just, again, I equate a lot of it to what I grew up with. Just, watching my mother and her success, and just always the things she shared with me about doing your best, working your hardest, everything you do, you want to be proud of, and, seeing an outcome, seeing a successful outcome from anything that you do, whether it's professional or personal.
And you have a profound way of expressing yourself respectfully, because notice, it wasn't about you. It's wanting something beyond you for all of us, a positive. It's not, hey, I want to lead. It's not, I want to lead, but rather I want to contribute what I can in wanting something for all of us to be better. And that's the awareness manifesting respectfully in real time, as always.
Well, thank you.
You're most welcome, my good friend. So you mentioned your mother twice, actually. I think a few times, but specifically a crucial pillar in your journey.
Absolutely. She's no longer with us, unfortunately. Miss her daily, but she started as a secretary at a company called Aronson Furniture, and was a single mom at the time, so worked because she had to, but then found her passion and just worked her way up. Didn't have official training in school, and got on the job training, proved herself, and ended up being the vice president. And just life lessons she taught me, all along the way. And it's just was very powerful. So I know when you first asked, me to speak, and I said, oh, that feeling of, well, what do I have to offer? Because I had that, I just take it for granted that all women know that this is what you do, and this is the path you can take. But it did take a step back to say, maybe that's what I can share. Maybe not everyone has that. And, if there's women out there that don't think they can do anything, or don't feel like, they belong in business, or can stand, side by side with the best of them, happy to share that message and let women know that it is possible. It's very possible, and, the sky's the limit.
And forgive me if I'm pushing too much relative to that facet and your mother, if you will, because I echo the power that my mother has had in influencing me, and the lessons I've learned in experiencing her and appreciating her in such a way that's
absolutely never can push too hard. It's I'm happy to speak of her, and hope I told her enough when she was around what an amazing influence she was on me.
Definitely. So my good friend, as you kind of think about this conference and the event and the opportunity of what's manifesting, if you could say sort of one key message to leaders across the world in all spectrums, what would that message be?
One message. I think not undervaluing yourself and your life experiences, and taking in all of your experiences. So don't undervalue any of them, and make sure that you reflect on them and use those in the business world. It's use them in your personal life too, but when we're talking about leaders in business, don't underestimate, don't downplay any situation, no matter how big or small, and what you can learn from it, and the effect that it can have on the way you conduct yourself personally and professionally.
So definitively don't discount yourself.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or the experiences you've had, good or bad. Some of my best leadership training was from leaders that I didn't necessarily care for their style, or have respect for the way they did things. So whether it's a good experience or bad experience, you can learn a lot from it.
Yeah. What is intriguing to me, and it strikes me as I listen to your wisdom. There's a lot of literature out there that talks about relaxing your ego, right? Or don't have so much of an ego. A lot of management literature focuses on that, right? Don't have an ego, etc., etc. we've almost gone to the extent that we actually attack our egos for the sake of not having any ego, and really almost convince ourselves that that's what we should be doing. When the reality, it gets to the point that you do it so much you discount yourself.
Understood. And an ego's okay, as long as you go back to the kryptonite, right?
Yep.
I can be really proud and boastful about the things that I do well, as long as I'm willing to admit the things that I don't do well and either improve on them or know when it's time to get out of my own way and bring in someone who does do it better than I do.
Yes. And this goes in a sense full circle, because to accept that reality, that means you've got to find the right balance. Enough ego to survive and thrive and understand how to grow. And as we said before, it's very, very easy for people to be one extreme or the other versus actually bring all the pieces together that will really manifest. So,
yeah. And don't get me wrong, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm not saying I'm always good at it, right? That's that. Go back to the basics and reflect and remind yourself of other people's strengths and making sure that you seek out, and that's a great leader, to have a team where you know who's good at some things and find the areas that need improvement and continue to help them, but make sure that you're putting the right people in the right seats to bring their best to the game.
And that's respectfully, that's how we know you're a great leader, is you recognize the fact that we're all a work in progress.
And so, still am.
Yes, likewise, and forever will be, quite honestly. So before we end, I have an ask. You could always say no. You could always say, "Sai, you've lost your mind." But I have to ask nonetheless. So,
okay.
I would love for you to consider, not now, not tomorrow, but when the time is right, find an opportunity. Capture more of your thoughts about your journey in terms of what you've learned relative to the preschool years and how that translates into the workplace. And then capture it in an article, in a book, in something. Because there's a lot of lessons that the world can benefit from.
That's a pretty big challenge.
It's an ask. It's an invitation.
It's an invitation. It's a dare.
Well, no. I never think in dares. You know me. But truly, anything I can do to help you to share that wisdom, by all means. But I think it would be a tremendous loss for the world if you don't share that kind of wisdom, because there's people walking around that wisdom, they haven't experienced it the way you have, and we could all benefit. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very, very flattering and humbling to think that I have that much to contribute. So I will have to put a pen to paper and maybe reach back out to you to help me along that journey.
Always and anytime, my good friend. Any closing thoughts before we sign off, Wendy?
Wow, we covered a lot. I think it just, thank you. I really appreciate being part of this conversation. I think it's great that you're having these conversations and letting women and men, just professionals, learn from other people's experiences and continue to grow and realize that there's a lot that we can learn from each other. So I think these conversations are very powerful, and I think you're doing a great thing for, women in the business world in general.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity, and we thank the world for the opportunity. And indeed, Andy Simon has been a tremendous partner, of course, in all this, and the Women Business Collaborative with Edie and the whole team. So a journey that we take together. So thank you again, Wendy, for everything.
Thank you, Sai.
Thank you.